behave. Now, you are right. Why do I get more money? Okay, I'll tell you why. Because there are KPIs for staff about outcomes and modules, and I want to get promoted to professor. So if you get first, I'll get promoted. Okay? So think on. Those of you who fail, I'm very happy. Costume me money, people. Alright? Are we all in? Superb. Keep an eye on that for me. I know you didn't do it. Alright, so first module, what are social media? So first lecture, what are social media and why do they matter? I assume everyone in this room has some interest in social media, of some kind. Or you wouldn't be doing this module, right? You'd be doing something really interesting, like, I don't know, journalism or PR, or some other made-up thing which has no academic benefit at all, right? So, you've decided to do this module and say, what are social media and why do they matter, therefore becomes a really important question. So, one thing I hate about using this is it's a bit slow. I want you to answer the question first. What are social media? You've decided to study it, you knock yourselves out and tell me. You're going to have to be a team. You have to be social. Using media. I'm on fire here, people. No, I have to Stop cheating! Damn! Yeah, I think we use it. Hey, this is impressive. I had you all taped as a bunch of dumbasses, but this is good. Change my assessment. Still got time to listen. Oh yeah, you would.
Why do I have my photo up there though?
No, she said, oh, you can't put I normally get like 3.
Okay, I'm genuinely vaguely impressed. This is really good. So, let's start thinking about what some of you have written and start picking out some of the critical issues that we have to address when we think about social media. So, the very first person, who's Kian? Hey Kian. You used the key word. Communicate. Social media platforms, social media applications are tools for communication. That communication is multifaceted. They are not just for communication between individuals. As we should know by now, they're also communication tools for brands to communicate with said individuals and with groups. They are communication tools utilised by other organisations, such as political organisations, to spread both information and indeed disinformation across to users as well. So communication is at the core of social media in terms of its functionality, but that functionality is multifaceted in itself. Platforms that allow people to interact globally despite distance and time between them. Sure. Social media, like other forms of electronic media that preceded social media and digital media, of which it is a kind, annihilate the spatial and temporal distances between users. I can send a message to somebody via Twitter if they're in New Zealand and they get it instantly. I can hold a conversation with them, despite the fact that we are thousands of miles apart. But most people's social media networks are very local. It's not the case that we have typically global networks of people who are connected with one another. They tend to be local and centered around some form of activity which takes place in non-social media space. Call that what you will. Real life. What about life is real? I like the term meat space, because that's where the meat is. Being there. So most networks tend to be localized rather than globalized. However, there are some circumstances which will change that for you in the future. Forums in which online communications can be made around the world, yeah, and posting and updating. Keyword, profile. Social media requires that you have some kind of profile, that you have an identifiable presence on a network of some kind. That does not have to be authentic, albeit a number of social media organizations enforce authenticity upon you. In particular, I'm thinking of Meta, which used to be Facebook and now is this horrible, horrible organization, Meta. They have a real name policy, which they force you to basically use your real name and real identity, especially on their historic platform, Facebook. They are a little looser when it comes to Instagram, but still enforcement of these rules on Instagram does take place. Tools to help people connect. The word tool is really important. Social media is a tool. It has uses. We use social media in particular ways. It has multiple uses. It can be used to connect with other people, it can be used to post content, it can be used to communicate with other people, it can be used, like me, to troll politicians. There's this guy who's in charge of the Conservative Party in Wales, Andrew R.T. Davis, and every time he posts on Twitter, I quote tweet him with a GIF. You know, you guys seen The Simpsons, right? I hate using Simpsons things because it feels like it was yesterday, but then I have to realise I'm like in the mid-40s, and like the 90s was fucking a million years ago. So there was an episode in The Simpsons in the 90s where Bart imagines himself in the future, like being really fat, and like a lock-in, and washing himself with a rag on a stick, yeah? Every time that guy tweets something, I quote tweet him with that GIF, because he is a disgusting, useless piece of shit. I have a use for Twitter, which is to troll people like this guy. The variable usage of platforms is something we call multi-stability. It means, now multi-stability is a concept which is really, really interesting historically, but I'll give you an example of what it means away from social media. Let's say, Will, you find a brick. Can you all picture a brick? You know what I'm talking about? What do you use a brick for?
Well, you could use it for building, or
Stop. Good. A use of a brick is to build something, right? And this is what it's designed for. I instantly see brick and think, smash. You know, if I saw a brick out there, I'd be like, entirely S in Windows going in, right? That is a multi-stable relationship to an object. You can see things in different ways. Things have different usages. It's like, you see a hammer, what's a hammer for? Hammering in nails. No, I'm going to take it to my next door neighbour who I really don't like and hammer in the back of the fucking head. Because it is multi-stable, you can use things in different ways. And social media is also multi-stable. We have different ways of using it. So for example, I use Twitter quite a lot to communicate with people. I do not use TikTok to communicate with people. I have a TikTok account, and like many people, I can sit for fucking hours looking at my For You page. I don't post things on TikTok though. Why? Because I'm not a 14-year-old girl. Okay, this is why I don't post things on TikTok, because it's fucking creepy. I don't have a Snapchat account, because again, I'm not a nonce. And people of my age who do have Snapchat are there to sexually abuse young people. Okay? So that is true, and you know, if you want to, it's just true. Multi-stability. We have different uses for different platforms, and even within the same platform, we will use them in different ways. Tools are multi-stable. And social media as a tool means it's multi-stable. Now, if you're already thinking about your assignments, that idea of multi-stability is very interesting, because you could look at a single platform and how you use it in very different ways in very different contexts. Another important word there is context. The context in which we use a particular social media platform can change depending on the usage, but each platform that we use has a different context as well. So, for example, you might be really, really active on Instagram and have a very particular set of uses for it, but maybe far less so on TikTok, because what you want from social media platforms does not correspond to the particular norms and conventions of using TikTok at that point in time. Context, therefore, becomes important. Interaction, sharing, interaction, nice interaction. Communities, the word community can be important. Social media platforms can support communities. Overcoming that kind of distance and temporal separation between individuals. So you can form communities via social media which can be stable over time, usually based around a particular set of interests. And you get really interesting cultural phenomena that arise from this. K-pop, for example, is a very, very popular, bewilderingly popular to me because it sounds shit, but it's a bewilderingly popular movement which has largely in the West been supported by social media in the ability to form, maintain and sustain communities around that flow. And you see this in a number of different ways as well. Video game communities are very contingent on this also. Web-based services, lovely. But, wrong. Why am I picking on Nikki? It's not just because she's from the Rhondda. Web-based. True in the past.
Is it because it now can be like app-based on your phones?
100% correct. Yes, absolutely. We have migrated from web-based platforms to application-based platforms. These application-based platforms run on the internet just like the web does, but they do not run on the web, which is something different. So be very careful with the terminology around that. Many of the services that we're familiar with today began as web-based platforms, but have migrated to applications. The reasons for this will become clear next week and the week after when we look at the sort of political economy of social media. On applications, it is much easier to control data, to control flows of data and to control advertising than it is on the web. So you create what we call walled gardens. Is there anything else? I'm already aware that time is just a fucking myth, isn't it? You know, it's half past already. I haven't got past the first slide yet. It's going to be like this. Gaming module for the third year was an absolute shit show. 10 till 12 it was supposed to run. I wasn't finished until 1 most weeks. So I just talk shit all the time. Have we got any other really interesting things? These are all great, by the way, and what I'll do is I'll snap these and put them up on Canvas. Everyone who contributed, well done. You're all very smart people, and I'm proud of you. Excellent. Those are some of the issues. Okay, knock yourselves out. You should be able to make more than one selection on this if I've set it up correctly, I hope. Fucking hope. This is more my own interest. You're just going to tick them all.
I love how you have to double check which one
How many do you need? Someone already has sensitivity, for example. Everybody here in this course uses Snapchat, so they use Snapchat.
spend a lot of time in the comments.
No, actually, there's nobody spends long amounts of time in the comment sections on news sites. They're all bolted to shit.
I see people. I mean, specifically in the course, on the
Oh yeah.
seriously, it's a really specific. I know.
I love it.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Are we all done? Yeah? Okay. What does the readout of this is really unhelpful, unfortunately. So I'll generate some bar charts for it later. What I'm interested in here is the difference between you guys and people who've taken this module previously. And there actually isn't really that much. Instagram and Snapchat still seem to be the most commonly used platforms. WhatsApp is pretty ubiquitous, right? People use YouTube. People don't think of YouTube as social media. What are the fundamentals of YouTube? You've got to create a profile. You're given access to liking and commenting on other people's content. You can follow people. You can establish communities of interest, etc., etc. That sounds like social media to me. So, although people don't think of it in terms of social media, again, I guess it depends on the context of the usage that you have. Right? So, you might use YouTube as a very casual user. You may not even have a profile, for example, or if you have a Google account, you kind of automatically do anyway.
I think YouTube considers itself like a search engine for video content.
It does, but that doesn't mean it hasn't built in social
Yeah.
function. Very, very. I mean, when YouTube started, you remember YouTube predates, or well, controversially, kind of about the same time as Facebook. The social parts of it have been there right from the beginning. They knew there were other video libraries available at the time that YouTube started. They knew if you built these features in, it would make it stickier. So the social is there for a reason. TikTok, that is odd. I thought TikTok would be the most. Can somebody, I obviously don't know who's voted for what here. Somebody doesn't use TikTok. Can you tell me why? Yeah.
It's just too much content, too many distractions.
Overwhelming. As somebody who's got really quite profound ADHD, I find TikTok too much a lot of the time. It's sensory overload. But if you're struggling with it and it's sucking up too much of your time, you don't have to have it, you know that? You can remove it. Yeah. Is there anyone else who doesn't have TikTok for a particular reason?
Just spent too much time on it, so I deleted it.
There you go. I like to categorise different platforms, as we'll get to know as we go through them. But I want to put it right out there from the beginning that TikTok is the crack cocaine of social media platforms. Unlike crack cocaine, it feels good, but it will do long-term damage. So yeah, like crack cocaine, the buzz is great, but it'll fuck your teeth. Okay, so you have to be careful. What else do we have here? Some of these are interesting. Be Real is starting to creep up on things, and I've never heard of such a stupid name for a social network in all my time. There is nothing real about Be Real. LinkedIn reeks of middle-aged men who have leather holsters for their smartphone. Okay, LinkedIn is the worst. If you have LinkedIn and you're in the second year of university, you're taking it way too fucking seriously at this point. It's a third year thing, all right?
I only had to do it because
there's a module that makes you do it.
Yeah.
No.
One of my favourite YouTubers.
It's actually the social network that has the highest incidence of sexual harassment complaints is LinkedIn. You guys know? You know what I'm talking about, right? I've never been sexually harassed on there, which disappoints me greatly. Reddit, for me, is a type of social media, and I've actually had some really interesting projects over the years about Reddit communities and people's presence on Reddit. Again, it's another one that people don't really think of as these things. Telegram is also creepy in a big way. And, we have no answers at the bottom. A couple of people have indicated other. Can somebody give me an example of an other?
Like dating profiles.
Okay. I've deliberately left them on, and I hope somebody will open the door to that. There is a lecture coming up in week 6 or 7 on dating as social media. Because if you think about dating profile, or dating apps again, profile, communication, networks created, etc., etc. So yeah. Although, again, interesting projects done on dating profiles. As a man, I will get to this in a few weeks' time, right? But as a man, how you use dating apps and what you experience on dating apps seems to be very different to what women get. That's all I'm going to say. We will get into it more as time goes on. Okay. Better start teaching you something now. So, what are social media? Now, this is still the most useful definition that I think there is of social media. This is from Dana Boyd and, I can't remember, Nicole Ellison. Sorry, I had to say the name in my head. Dana Boyd and Nicole Ellison writing in 2007. So this is 16 years ago, this definition. But I still think it encompasses what we need to think of when we think of these things, albeit there are now some changes to this definition. So they define social network sites. We can forget sites anymore, because this was in the age when they were web-based, as web-based services. Both Dana and Nicole would define it differently now, and they would take those terms out of it. They'll allow individuals to, 1, construct a public or semi-public profile within a bounded system. Very important. That profile is only visible within the system, or if you make it explicitly available outside of that system. So there's a boundary to a profile that you make within a social network. Articulate a list of other users with whom they share a connection. Social networking is a part of social media. And 3, view and traverse their list of connections and those made by others within the system. The nature and nomenclature of those connections may vary from network to network. What makes social network sites unique is not only they allow individuals to meet strangers, but rather that they enable users to articulate and make visible their social networks. So it gives a prominence to the network itself. This can result in connections between individuals that would not otherwise be made. But that is not often the goal. These meetings are often frequently between latent ties who share some offline connection. Participants are not necessarily networking or looking to meet new people. Instead, they are primarily communicating with people they are already part of an extended social network with. It's very easy to think of social media as being global. But in reality, it's incredibly local. The networks and the communications that we have with people tend to be people that we see on a day-to-day basis. The stickiest points of connection tend to be with the people you sit next to. Now, that's weird. Because why do these two here need to communicate via social media when they're sitting next to each other? All the time, every day. Can you imagine being around these two annoying pricks all the time? It's painful. So why? What does social media do, which means Nikki Ange can do this all the time? What does it do? What does it bring beyond what you can do with your friends when you are sitting next to them?
That'll be to help you do things like planning, like when you going to get to the lecture, or you can go to like before a meeting, and then that helps you spend more time together already.
I'm sure that's something you do.
Give
But why can't you do that when you're sat next to them?
Because that's the barrier of time and space.
Okay, we are getting somewhere. Ollie, you are like dancing around instead of
Right.
jumping on it at the moment.
Gives you more topics to talk about.
Does it?
A bit kind of, because there's a lot of content that you like to share with them and like.
Okay, I can see that. But it's not quite the point. But I accept the point. I think it's a valid one.
When you're next to them, sometimes you just show them stuff that you find online, so you're not sending it to them, but you're like, look at what I found. So.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Privatized network allows discretion. They don't have to vote.
True, but you could have discretion in space as well, right? You could have a private space. But I agree, there is especially if you're using something like WhatsApp, there's an encryption to what's going on. Okay, put it like this. Social media allows people, yes, to coordinate their activities in the way that you've described, and to overcome temporal and spatial differences between them. But when my point is that you don't need to have a spatial or temporal distance between you, you could just meet. Why do we not do that? Okay, social media affords us the possibility of not having to do that. Social media gives us what we call an affordance, so we no longer have to be proximal to the people that we communicate with all the time. This is not to confuse it with giving you some kind of freedom, because actually it's kind of the opposite to freedom. You are dependent upon social media to make those connections.
And it's also making you isolated, kind of.
I don't even think in extreme cases, but in many cases I would say this is a consequence of having these systems available.
Yeah.
That we no longer have to. If you want, right, I need to talk to you. Yeah, we're friends, okay?
Yeah.
I need to talk to you.
You just called or text.
I just WhatsApp. Call? Oh, who the fuck calls? Oh no, that's anxiety. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing phone. WhatsApp, way easier.
Yeah, but there's people
Listen to the words I just used. WhatsApp, way easier. Does that make sense? Way easier. Instead of going somewhere to talk to somebody, instead of arranging a time to meet, instead of arranging a place to meet, instead of arranging an activity to do, WhatsApp, way easier.
Waiting for a bus that's inevitably 5 minutes late.
Swansea buses, again, time is relative. Swansea bus time, doubly so. Doesn't exist. I used to live in Dublin, right? I used that app where you could track where the bus was. And like, the bus would be coming down the street according to the app, and you're like, there's no fucking bus. Right? It was the phantom buses, right? And what happened was, they had GPS trackers on the drivers' badges, which would tell you what the buses was. It was the drivers were jumping out with the bus and the depot, jumping in their car, going home, and they hadn't taken their badge off. So the bus was coming past you, there's some guy in a bus driver's uniform in a car coming past you. For fuck's sake. So, social media makes it easier for us to communicate, but that is a trade-off. It facilitates the ability to communicate and therefore changes the conditions of communication in society.
Because you can literally get hold of anyone at any time.
True. I mean, my point to that would be, we don't. The people we get hold of are the people that we see, the people that we communicate with. It's mad, like I've friends who have kids and, you know, who are like 14, 15 now. And when I go over and we're having a couple of beers or something like that, the kids never come down from upstairs. They're in constant communication with their parents. You must be familiar with this. It's like, WhatsApp is dinging all the time. It's like, just fucking walk down the stairs. Do you know, if you've got something to say? But that's not how it works anymore, because these tools have transformed communication itself. Communication now isn't. How freaky is it in a university context that if you want to talk to a lecturer, you have to go to their room? Oh, isn't it weird? And it's got serious nonce energy. Yeah? And it's like, this is bad. Like, you know, I do not want people, and I don't want people coming to my office. My office is the place where I can close the door, play metal, and like, tell all my colleagues, like, you know, I rule and you don't. That's my office space. And then, ding, 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 ding. Can you help it? Fuck off. I don't want to help you. Text me. Send me a WhatsApp, I'll help you. But we can't do that. We're not allowed to do that. So it's like we are out of sync with how communication itself has been transformed over the past 25 years. Ollie.
So essentially that's kind of linking back to the run again about how it's changed.
Did you just look at the next slide by any chance? You can have a look at this in your own time. It's just a bunch of stats that tell us what's going on in terms of social media. I love some of these. There's some really obscure ones I love. 2 million swipes on Tinder per minute.
Oh wow.
How many fucking ugly people are there on Tinder that you have to do that right in every minute, like, you know?
Not necessarily ugly as much as it's probably weird.
I don't know, when you get to my age and you use Tinder, let me tell you. Alright,
Well, I've never used
it's
it.
bad out there, man. There's a lot here. I love some of these other ones. It's great. Email is apparently a dead medium. People hate using email, right? You guys hate using email. 197.6 emails sent every minute in 2021. I don't think it's that dead.
I think most of those would be automated probably.
Yeah, spam. That's true. In terms of social media history, I've kind of cut. Actually, with the exception of TikTok, not much has happened in the last 8 years. The first digitized social media starts to emerge in the late 1970s with what we call bulletin boards. We start to see the big movement here from 2002 up to about 2010. That is when the core social media infrastructure which exists today starts to form. 2002 is very important because of one service called Friendster. Friendster, I remember, it does not exist for a very long time. It laid the architecture for everything that came afterwards. Profile, network, communications tools. Everyone that came afterwards copied what Friendster did. Friendster, unfortunately, had no idea how to monetize what they were doing, and so they basically, when they got to a critical mass of numbers, the servers used to go down all the time, so you couldn't actually use it, so everyone migrated to other things as they emerged. MySpace, in particular, became very important afterwards. 2010 is very important for a couple of reasons. One, the emergence of Instagram, which is now the dominant form of social media because it's visual social media as opposed to text-based, which is the dominant form. And two, what happens to Instagram is very, very important. Instagram began as an independent company. It was swallowed alive by a bigger company called Facebook at that time. It tells us that social media is actually contracting. When social media companies emerge, when new platforms emerge, they get swallowed. They get torn up and swallowed by bigger companies. Facebook being the most egregious example of this. It doesn't just own Instagram, but also looked at WhatsApp becoming popular and thought, well, we can compete, or we can just buy it. And that's exactly what they did. So we see over time a concentration into major players. This is inevitably a bad thing. In the history of media, when you see mediums become concentrated in the hands of a couple of operators, it means it stifles development, it stifles innovation, and inevitably leads to poorer service for users. I think that's fairly fair with regards to what's happening in social media at the moment. Let's take 5 minutes right here. I'm going to leave this up and we can come back to it. I'm testing your knowledge. You're halfway through a media degree, all of you. I want to know what you think what this word means. But let's get up, go take a walk.
Oh, God.
Exercise.